Hello everyone, my name is Brian Bourgeon and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to talk about how NASCAR, how I feel, has been on the up as of late, a bit on the rise in trying to get back to its roots. As we may know, NASCAR has a new marketing campaign planned for next year, known as Hell Yeah, for 2026, as they hint that NASCAR wants to go back to its roots. I personally believe that could be true, but at the same time it could not be, because while NASCAR has also been, making a lot of good decisions in my opinion as of late. For example, a couple days ago they decided to part ways with race director Jusan Hamilton, as also he's no longer with the company as well, which is pretty huge. He was a race director in NASCAR who didn't make a lot of good calls, untimely cautions, weird calls with the cautions, controversial calls since from 2022 to now. So he's been pretty iffy. Also, more things that NASCAR has been hinting out for next season is that, according to the Dale Jr. download, Dale Jr. mentioned that there's going to be potentially more practice time coming next season, which is something us fans have been advocating for a long time, ever since COVID ended, that we've been advocating for more practice, more time for the drivers and teams to understand their cars, learn what their equipment is all about, everything that NASCAR from its roots had, which was man and machine uniting to become one. The team understands the car, makes the adjustments to be better than the other teams, which is, what we want in NASCAR, not just spec, really, where it's all just, one engine, same power, there's no fun in that. Back then, in NASCAR, like in the OG days, you had the teams trying to be better, trying to one-up each other, be faster than one another. It was no equal. There was no equal ground. It was about the driver making the difference with what the team also tried to give to them, to make their car just a tad bit faster than the other. That's what, made NASCAR, even for me, when I started watching back in 06, mean a lot to me, Teams mattering, drivers making the difference, cars being monsters that can't be handled. That's what, made NASCAR. Another thing that I want to point out is that, according to Corey LaJoy's Stack and Pennies podcast, Brad Keselowski, who was in the show at the time, hinted that NASCAR is going to increase horsepower for 2026. Could be up to 750, 790, around that number, 740 to 790, which was also something that we NASCAR fans have been advocating for a long time. More horsepower, more power. Make the cars harder to drive. That's what we want. NASCAR usually nowadays have been trying to experiment with tires, Goodyear, to make sure the races are better. For example, at short tracks with the next gen car have been at times really good, but majority of the times lackluster. For example, one race that I want to comment on that I will give NASCAR this and Goodyear, they absolutely did incredible, was the Bristol Night Race a couple weeks ago. That was a tire wear race, similar to spring of 2024, I want to say, where Denny Hamlin won that in a tire wear survival race. That's what happened 2 weeks ago, where we had another tire wear night race, and it was an amazing race, to be honest. It was absolutely amazing. There were a bucket load of cautions, comers and goers. Tires mattered, which is a massive bonus. Tire wear really mattered. You had to learn how to save your tires. It was amazing. And prior to that race, in practice, there were no signs of tire wear, so all the drivers heading into the race had the mentality that tires weren't going to matter. When they figured out that tires mattered at around lap 30, the energy of the event changed, because now drivers had to be on the fly managing their tires. They had to save, find, how long do the tires last. That's, what us fans and I would also like to see more NASCAR. The element of surprise, not like tires, only lasting 40 laps. No, like 60, 60, 65, 70. That's, in my opinion, the sweet spot. But that type of tire wear we saw, for example, in the Bristol Night Race, that is great tire wear. because it has the drivers, you have to manage your tires. You have to really manage them, take care of them. I just wish they, go on for a bit. But it's what made the Bristol Night Race such a great race. You had tire, you had passing, you had vintage Bristol, bumping and running, contact, bit of tempers. That is what made Bristol back then. And we saw that in the Bristol Night Race this year. We saw a lot of vintage Bristol that race. That race was won by Christopher Bell. It was a great race. Brad Keselowski finished second. He attempted a bump and run on the last lap around turns 3 and 4. It was unsuccessful. Not the first time Brad attempted a bump and run at JGR driver and failed. But, it is what it is. Brad will take a second place finish. That was a great result for him and RFK. They have been consistent all year. Unfortunately, none of their cars made the playoffs because, the playoff system is more winning you're in than rewarding consistency throughout the year, which is a shame. But thankfully, hopefully, the 36 race format, which is season-long points, will be applied next year. And who knows, you actually being consistent throughout all the races will be rewarded, which would be great and also what us fans would want. It's what the community would want. It was a great race. There's a lot of comers and goers during Bristol. You had Shane Smith, who finished 3rd, Corey Heim, who finished 6th, Hocevar 7th, Justin Haley 13th, John Hunter Nemechek 14th. During that period of time, he was racing pretty good, though. He had brought really good cars to the track. Riley Herbst 18th. You had a lot of, underdogs, comers and goers, especially during that last 30 laps before that last caution where at the time Lear Keselowski made contact with, I believe it was Cole Custer. He made contact with Custer and then got into Wallace, bringing out that last caution in the Bristol Night Race. Before that caution, you kind of had no idea who was going to win because of everyone trying to manage their tires as long as they could with the strategies they were on. You had that unknown, which is what I love in sports, a natural unknown. Something that happens naturally, and you don't really know what's going to happen. That is what makes sports, and that's what makes NASCAR. The natural unknown. It's like the unknowns of past days, like who was going to win 03 between Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven? Who was going to win between Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon years ago? Like all those unknowns. Who was going to win between Matt Kenseth and Jimmy Johnson at Texas? Like all of those races that, have like all their elements that made NASCAR back then, that's what makes the sport that we want to see now. And it's the signs that, these past couple races, Bristol, New Hampshire, and Kansas, have kind of been showing, which is definitely, back to its roots, the marketing campaign that NASCAR is presenting. Now, after Bristol, we had New Hampshire. New Hampshire, in my opinion, was also a high-quality race. Like Bristol. Bristol was high quality, so was New Hampshire. Because New Hampshire, you also saw tire wear. Not a lot as Bristol, but you had some tire wear. You had some drivers, having to manage a little bit of the tires. You can move around. Obviously, New Hampshire is a hard track to pass at. It's really hard to pass at New Hampshire. But you could. It was not impossible. For example, one example of that is Josh Berry. Josh Berry was involved in an incident with Shane Bongesbergen, where they were racing around 1 and 2 in a bit of a pack of cars. SBG slid up a little bit to Berry and caused Berry to spin out. This was, I believe, in stage 1, I want to say, towards the middle part of stage 1. The thing with the next-gen car is you really can't pass in dirty air. However, Josh Berry, despite getting involved in that incident, rallied all the way back to the front, and at the end of the race in New Hampshire, he was fighting Ryan Blaney for the race win. He had a faster car. He had a hot rod. Penske cars, to be fair, that weekend were all really good. Even Penske affiliated 21 car. Josh Berry was fast too. Arguably, he was the fastest car. But unfortunately, he ran out of tires at the end, and Blaney saved better than Berry, and Blaney ended up winning the race at New Hampshire over Josh Berry. But that was also a good race because, you had tempers between Denny Hamlin and Ty Gibbs. Hamlin, who was very frustrated at the time racing Ty Gibbs, made some contact with Ty Gibbs. Well, he dumped him, to be fair. I'm not going to add filter. He dumped him, wrecked him, because Hamlin was frustrated because a teammate was racing him really hard when Hamlin's fighting for a championship, Ty Gibbs isn't. I understand both sides. Hamlin, because He wants a championship ring. There's no more denying it. Hamlin's been around the sport for like, what, 2006? He's been around for a long time. Next year marks 2 decades since his debut. He has not won a championship. He's arguably the most successful driver in NASCAR history besides Mark Martin, who has never won a championship. And he wants that championship. He wants it bad. He will do no matter what to do it. He wrecked Ty Gibbs that race. Ty Gibbs was obviously frustrated. And after, in the medical center after his incident, he referenced maybe some payback. Was it going to happen in Kansas? Probably, but the chance never came. But there's that, little hint of, teammate drama. That also, which is also something I like as well. When it comes to race day, there's no such thing as teammates. Like, in my opinion. Yeah, you can help each other when the opportunity comes, but, at the end of the day, that's something that you choose. That's something you choose. Like, you want to help him? Help him. But at the end of the day, when it comes to race day, you're on the racetrack, they're all rivals. You gotta, you somewhat try to work together, but you all have one common goal that you want to achieve over the rest of the drivers, which is to win the race. And for the playoff drivers, it's to win the race and move on to the next round. All of that plays massive factors. But besides that, Hamlin and Gibbs, will Gibbs probably repay Hamlin this coming weekend at the Roval? Who knows? Time will tell. As for the rest of the race, in my opinion, was very high quality. You could pass, you could move around the racetrack, high, middle, low, all the lanes worked. You can move around, which was important in my opinion for a track like New Hampshire, the expansion of the racetrack. You can expand, move your lines around, all of that really matters. And plays into massive dividends into, a race day, for a race. You be able to move around, make some moves, pass, battle other race cars. That's what makes, the sporting event, the racing event race properly. It's really, really fun. As for the results for New Hampshire, you had Blaney, Barry, Logano, Elliott, Bell, Larson, Michael McDowell, which is, that's what I mean, comers and goers. You had comers and goers as well for New Hampshire. And McDowell's one of them. Chastain, Briscoe, Hocevar. Hamlin ended up finishing P12 that race. Preece, Bowman, for example, top 15. Noah Gragson finished 16th. Todd Gillen finished 19th. Pretty solid performance. Riley Herbst finished 22nd. All those drivers, like underdog runs. They did well. New Hampshire also was high quality. But another race that was really high quality, though, has to be this past weekend's race at Kansas. A lot of people point to saying that Kansas was a great race because of the finish. I disagree. As someone who's seen the highlights of Kansas was throughout a really good race where you had all of the lines working. Bottom, middle, top. You could go everywhere. You can move around. Like, for example, drivers would enter turn 3 or turn 1 at the outside and move all the way to the bottom. Once you're in turn 2, you could move around. Everyone had their lines. Top, middle, bottom. You can, preferably though, you had the top and the middle, but you could use the bottom as well. All of those lanes, played a factor at Kansas. And throughout the race, Kansas was really good. Granted, it was dominated by Denny Hamlin, who had the car to beat. But throughout the top 10, there was a lot of battling between Chase Elliott, Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson. All of those guys who were pretty fast, All those cars that had hot rods, they were fighting. And, it was great. But, like people have mentioned, that I also have to mention too, but the finish for Kansas was amazing. Prior to that, though, again, the racing was amazing. The first overtime attempt, we had Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell fighting for the race win with teammate Chase Briscoe in it as well. Heading into turn 3, they were about 3 wide. There was also great racing between Byron and Larson at the back as well. Byron, though, to be fair, prior to mentioning what happened, was really just off. He was the slowest Hendrick car by far. Like, he was really, behind the 8 ball really all race. But despite that, he finished 9th, a top 10. Granted, he'll take it, but definitely performance has to be better for William Byron if he wants to, get into the Final Four or fight for the championship at Phoenix. But before that, they almost made contact, Briscoe, Bell, and Bubba. They almost made contact at 3Bs entering turn 3. Bubba and Bell were side by side heading to 4. You could hear the roar of the engine coming out of turn 4. Such a beautiful sound. And then it cuts to St. Smith riding the wall, technically. His car on its side, riding the turn 3 and 4 wall, then doing a bit of a rollover. After the incident, it was because John Hunter, Nemechek, and Saint were fighting. Turn 3 and 4 towards mid-pack. And John Nemechek got loose, slid into St. Smith, and put Saint into the wall, causing him to be on his side. An unfortunate accident. Saint was upset, I assumed. So was his pit crew. I mean, I read somewhere that security had to be called to the 38 hauler. I mean, no footage came out after, when that happened. So, I mean, probably the 38 team were upset. No denying it. They had a top 10 car that race. They definitely had a top 10 car. Saint's been on it. His past races, he's really been on it. But yeah, that definitely happened. Another case of Kansas having a super speedway type incident, which is not something you see every day. Also, a random fun fact that I will get to at the end, because I'd be spoiling the winner. The finish. The finish was absolutely amazing. The second overtime was amazing. You had Bubba Wallace versus Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Elliott, who I believe restarted P10 at the time of the second overtime restart, heading to the white flag, was P5. He was on a rocket. Although, to be fair, I think some drivers took 2 tires. Chase took 4 tires. So he definitely had the fresh tire wear. He had the fresh rubber, and he was definitely going to be the car to beat if he got to the front. Then in turn 1 and 2, you had that shot, turn 1 and 2, all 6 cars, because Reddick was there, but to be fair, off turn 2, he lost some ground, and therefore, he was kind of a lost cause. It was a thrilling 5-way fight between Elliott, Hamlin, Bell, Briscoe, and Bubba. Heading into turn 3, it was Bubba Wallace versus Denny Hamlin, who Hamlin had no power steering. With, I believe, 29 to go, he reported to his team that he had no power steering. He had absolutely no power steering, and it's kind of he was really struggling inside the car, because with power steering, you don't have to rely so much on your strength. You do have to rely on your strength, but not 100%, because the power steering inside the car allows you to kind of like help you turn the wheel. With no power steering, it's all pure muscle, pure strength. You gotta, turn the thing. And then, heading into turn 3, Hamlin and Bubba are side by side. Hamlin pushes Bubba up the racetrack. Granted, he had no power steering, but they're going for the win. That's a song I've been hearing as well on social media. Hamlin raced Bubba too hard. Bullshit. It's the playoffs. You're racing, in this format, you're racing for the win. You're not racing for points. You're racing to win, to move on, to guarantee yourself that you're going to the next round. Guarantee. Keyword. Hamlin pushes Bubba up the racetrack. Bubba hits the wall. Bell and Briscoe are gaining. But Chase Elliott riding the bottom. Remember when I mentioned that all 3 lanes worked? Chase Elliott took the bottom and just went by Bell and Briscoe, and then makes contact with Hamlin and passes Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace to win by 0.067 hundredths of a second, I want to say, for the race win at Kansas. An absolute thrill. He actually won by 0.069, excuse me. The absolute thriller. An absolute thrill-over finish to a really high-quality race. Again, all 3 races, from New Hampshire from Bristol to New Hampshire to Kansas, were all amazing races. Really good stuff, and it's what I've been noticing with, the marketing campaign NASCAR wants to get to. If NASCAR really wants to, market and make the fans realize that we're actually going back to their roots, this momentum they have helps a lot. It really does helps a lot, and makes us fans wonder, is actually the NASCAR we know making a return? An OG NASCAR making a return? I hope so. I really, really do hope all of these 3 races have, in my opinion, had that little vibe of, the vintage NASCAR, we watched. The thrills, the being able to pass, the fighting, the on-track stories, all of that's what made NASCAR back then. And I've noticed some of that NASCAR in the past 3 races, which I love. Again, all 3 races were amazing. NASCAR wants to get back to its roots. There have been rumors and news saying that there's going to be horsepower increase for next year, horsepower increase, more practice time. People that have not been making a good job or doing a good job in NASCAR getting the boot. All of those things, getting NASCAR back to its roots is starting to pick up steam. It's starting to really pick up steam, and I'm glad to see it because, hey, if we can return to the OG NASCAR, I'd love it. Obviously, we have to fix the car. Tires need to, wear. And the dirty air, removing the diffuser and parts of the underbody could definitely help. But, hey, we're starting to see some steam. And with the recent news coming out, NASCAR is on the up. NASCAR is truly on the rise again. And it makes me happy to see, as somebody who's been watching NASCAR for a really long time. But other than that, that will be all for my video. Again, these past 3 races for NASCAR, Bristol, New Hampshire, and Kansas have been great. Amazing races. And who knows what's coming up next? Who knows? Who truly knows? And hopefully 2026 can be NASCAR's best season and the most reminiscent to the OG vintage NASCAR we all know and love. I thank you all for watching, and y'all have a wonderful day.